Chat on This are a series of conversations designed to be thought-provoking, informative, and offer an empowering approach towards well-being for your family. Brought to you by Advanced Health Chiropractic.
I can hardly contain myself. Today, I have the honour of introducing Dr. Libby Weaver as our guest on Chat on This. I have been reading Dr. Libby's books, attending her events, watching her TED Talks, and recommending and participating in her programs for the last 20 years. Her information and ability to inspire and influence health are quite profound. Her approach is wonderfully aligned with chiropractic. There is a shared understanding of the body being intelligent and wired for health and well-being. It's our responsibility to honour this by respecting the body and how it works, thereby unleashing the energy and vitality. I'd like to start this chat on this episode with Dr. Libby's bio, which gives us a great understanding of the breadth and the depth of your work, Dr. Libby, and also your experience. Dr. Libby's mission is to educate and inspire, enhancing people's health and happiness and igniting a ripple effect that transforms the world. Nutritional biochemist Dr. Libby Weaver, PhD, is a 13 times bestseller author, speaker, and founder of the food-based supplement range BioBlends, which I use myself. Armed with an abundance of knowledge, scientific research, and a true desire to help people regain their energy and vitality, Dr. Libby empowers and inspires people to take charge of their health and happiness through her books, her live events, and online courses. A respected international speaker, Dr. Libby's expertise in nutritional biochemistry has led her to share the stage with Marianne Williamson, Sir Richard Branson, and Tony Robbins, as well as many female thought leaders. She is regularly called upon by television and radio as an authoritative figure in health and the wellness industry. With a natural ability to break even the most complex of concepts into layman's terms, Dr. Libby's health messages embrace her unique three-pillared approach that explores the interplay between nutrition, emotions, and the biochemistry of the body. It's no surprise that when it comes to achieving and maintaining ultimate health and well-being, Hollywood stars such as Hugh Jackman and Debbie Lee Finesse describe her as a one-stop shop in achieving and maintaining ultimate health and well-being. Welcome, Dr. Libby. It is really exciting to be chatting with you today. There are so many areas that we could actually delve into. However, I'd like to chat specifically with you today about women's health, specifically around the rushing women syndrome. I think this is a term that possibly was coined by you.
Yes, it is, Katie. Firstly, thank you for that very generous introduction. It's a joy to speak to you. So rushing woman syndrome, it's not a medical condition. It was the name I gave to a book I wrote back in 2011. And I wrote the book really based on what I saw was an emerging trend in women's health back then. And the rush has only become more intensified since then, a decade later. And so I'd also had lots of women who said to me, Libby, I bought that book, a decade ago and I haven't had time to read it. So it's, I think, a critically important topic that women understand now that even the last 2 years have happened, because it's very much tied up in the constant and relentless output of stress hormones and what living in that state then does, the ripple effect of having those constantly elevated stress hormones and the way it impacts things like our sex hormone balance, our thyroid function, our sleep, and our ability to laugh easily at things and really enjoy life.
Well, it's interesting because back in 2012, I think you did a TED Talk, which is still available, obviously, on YouTube, on Google, I should say. I referred to it to one of my wonderful practice members yesterday, who I think that those messages from that book are so relevant today. I wondered whether you could possibly describe to us what a rushing woman looks like. What characteristics do they exhibit?
Well, she sort of feels tired yet wired. She feels overwhelmed easily, even though she might not reveal that to other people on the outside. She needs her daily coffee fix, and it's some people, when you say to them, I need you to take a break from coffee, they might not be sleeping properly. Obviously, caffeine leads the human body to produce adrenaline. And some people, when you say, I need you to take a 4-week break from coffee so we can see how your body responds to that, some people go, oh, sure, no worries. Other people they just want to punch me in the face. They wish they'd never met me when I say something like that. So rushing women really need their daily coffee fix. They feel like they never have enough time. They feel like they can't say no. They feel like if they say no, they're going to let other people down. So a big driver of their behavior is, I don't ever want to let anyone down. They feel like they don't get enough help. They feel like no one helps them. They recite often a little mantra in their head, if I don't do it, it won't get done, which may or may not be true. They feel too sometimes responsible for other people's happiness. They try to hide their stress from others. They sometimes dream about running away from it all, and they wonder if this is really the life they signed up for. They find it difficult to relax without a glass of wine. They suffer very commonly with PMS. Often they also have digestive system symptoms, because when we're producing adrenaline, it says to the body that our life is literally in danger. And because in the not very recent history of the evolution of humanity, the only time we ever made adrenaline was when our life was literally in danger. And the body has not yet learned to discern between the adrenaline we make when a car drives out in front of us and the adrenaline we make when we've had a few coffees and we have 600 unopened emails. So because of that, because the body thinks our life's in danger, when we've got high circulating levels of adrenaline, it diverts the blood supply that's normally so fantastic to the digestive system away to the periphery, to the arms and the legs, because obviously our blood carries oxygen and nutrients, and we need particularly the oxygen to be able to get away from the danger the body thinks it's in. So there's often digestive system problems like IBS. They feel stiff very easy. So it's almost like they wake up in the morning and their body feels very stiff. Some women will describe when they first wake up in the morning, they feel like they've aged 20 years overnight. It can ease up a little bit over the day. Often their sleep is not good because adrenaline wants to keep us ever so slightly awake, so that we can save our own life if there really is a threat. And there's sort of a franticness, and that swings from almost feeling frantic and swinging to exhaustion, trying to balance household and childcare and paid work, because it wasn't that long ago in human history where women were given the opportunity to do what were traditionally their father's jobs, but a lot of women have maintained what were traditionally their mother's responsibilities. And so what's unfolded is this frantic double shift of work day and night with very little, if any, rest. And although we are so completely capable, what I really want people to appreciate is that we have never, ever, ever in the history of our species asked our bodies to live like this. And some people's bodies are rebelling with all these symptoms.
Yes. I feel like that possibly describes many of us. And I guess what I'd like to ask is, why do you think this is so prevalent? You've kind of touched on it just at the end there. What, in your opinion, is the root cause?
So when we rush because we care, Katie. If we didn't care, we wouldn't do it. We wouldn't rush. So it comes from a really beautiful place. However, I always want to take everything right back to its heart, if you like. And so although, yes, we care very much for others, about helping others, being there for others, doing things for others, although we care very much about other people, we also care very much what they think of us. And so the way I describe it is, it's as if we have a group of words, I call them forehead words. It's as if we have a set of words written across our forehead, and they are the traits, as in TRAITS. They're the traits that we want other people to see in us. And so a really great, very useful thing to do is to take pen and paper and actually ask yourself, how do I need other people to see me? Sometimes it's good to do that in a big, broad sense. Other times it's good to do that with specific people. So you might do it, how do I need my mother to see me, or my daughter, or my sister, or a particular colleague, whatever it is. And you write down the traits. And rushing women will often they need other people to see in them kindness, selflessness, thoughtfulness. It can be they need others to see them as competent, efficient, hardworking, intelligent. So there's no right or wrong with any of these answers. It's just really important that we know the traits we want others to see in us. And then the next time you get really worked up on the inside, whether you're revealing that to others or not, it's really helpful to pause and consider, am I perceiving someone is seeing me in the opposite way to one of these forward words? Because most of the time the answer will be yes. And we develop the perception that we have to be a certain way to maintain the love or approval of others. And we don't realize that as little children, yes, we needed others to care enough for us to give us food and clothing and shelter so we could literally survive. But until we examine this, we still often live our lives as adults with the belief that we need love or approval to survive. And it runs our life until we examine it. So we need to develop flexibility in how we can handle other people seeing us. And there's a whole slice of freedom in that. And that doesn't mean that you stop doing things for others. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means that your nervous system no longer feels like your survival is dependent on everyone always being kind towards you or patient with you or whatever you perceive you need. There's flexibility in it, and there's a huge amount of growth, I think, in that work when we do that. But that's essentially what I think is at the heart of it.
I love that. And that's part of what you were talking about with your 3 pillars. So really understanding the underlying emotional drivers for that. You know, just as you were talking, I wonder, and I'm sure we could have another whole conversation about this, but I wonder that as women's roles have changed over time, you know, with feminism and all the rest of it, and us thinking we can or should or can do it all, that surely has a big part to play in it. You know, we want to be those empathetic, caring, loving people, but also this constant pull of also wanting to be able to prove ourselves, so competence and our ability to succeed in a career sense, I guess.
And I think too, fulfillment. I think when we have the ridiculous, we all have the ridiculous privilege of, we don't all, but we've had the privilege of getting an education. And I know for myself personally, I think, I had this crazy privilege of getting an education. It's all wasted if I don't pass that on. So how do you pass that on? Obviously, you share it with others. It forms part of your work in the world. So it's I think it's really important to acknowledge that we're entirely capable. It's just that we haven't, society hasn't yet, and societal norms haven't yet completely adjusted to everything that we now do and everything we are capable of. And so when we ask too much of our body, it will give us symptoms that it's not happy. And I also think it's important to acknowledge that it's when we can have a full and busy and thriving life and not be suffering, because that could be we're expressing authentically who we are. Whereas when we do things out of duty, it's very depleting. And that's what I'm trying to help women to discern between. So what are you saying yes to? What are you committing to that's not really authentically you? So it's a feeling of duty. And when you peel the layers back on that, it all comes back to how your concern about how others will perceive you. So when we do things that are authentic, and that might be a full throttle, really busy life, but if that's authentic for you and you're living on purpose, you're living your mission, you're having the experience in your life that you're supposed to be having, it's incredibly energizing. And that can be a really busy, full life, but it's not depleting as in the way that it is when we feel like it's always out of duty.
Yes, I love that, because I think the scary thing for some of us is that, do we have to pare things back? No, we have to be more congruent with our purpose. So other than understanding what our 4 head words are and what drives us, and then you've given us a lovely little tip there where we can act in congruence with, what is truly important to us. What other simple steps will help us get back onto or start us on that right path so that our bodies physically aren't showing these symptoms?
So I am a big fan of working out what makes you as an individual produce stress hormones in the first place. I wrote a book in 2019 called The Invisible Load, and it was partly because we needed to change the conversation around stress. Instead of thinking that stress just comes from everything outside of us, from that person, that situation, what we've forgotten is that it's actually our response to that person or that situation. And so I wanted to put people back in the driver's seat of actually working out what leads them to produce stress hormones in the first place. So part of the road out of rushing woman syndrome is to do that and find out what actually leads you as an individual to make stress hormones. So people obviously want to block their ears with probably what I'm about to say, because caffeine, we touched on it, but caffeine leads the body to make adrenaline. So it doesn't mean don't have it, but it means get really honest with yourself about how it's affecting you. Adrenaline is the main hormone behind anxious feelings. So if you're already a very anxious person, then caffeine can lead you into a very uncomfortable place. Whereas if you truly don't sweat the small stuff, you're a really chilled out person, then some caffeine might just help your brain focus better, or, so there's no hard and fast rule with it. It's just be honest with how it affects you. The second thing that obviously leads us to make adrenaline are our perceptions of pressure and urgency. So some things are urgent. If you get a phone call from school that your child's been injured, that's urgent. You want to get there as quickly as you can. Whereas I think what a lot of us have done is we've made what we get to do each day full of stress and pressure and urgency when it doesn't need to be that way. So really explore those perceptions and save them for when you really need it. I think too, obviously, we consciously or unconsciously worry what others think of us. A little example I can give you that I've heard a lot of over the last 2 years is we might be working from home and a colleague rings us and says, "Where's that work? I needed it yesterday." We don't actually hear what someone says. We hear what we think they meant. And so if you pause and think, the request for work is not in and of itself stressful, but what will usually make that stressful is because we put a comma in the sentence, "Oh, my colleague asked me for work, therefore they think I'm incompetent, inefficient, not a hard worker." So in other words, we perceive disapproval coming from the other person. And if we can, so another little tip to begin to retire from rushing woman syndrome is to become aware of all the thoughts you think that aren't true, because so much of what we think isn't actually true. So the first part of the sentence might be true. My colleague asked me where that work was because they needed it yesterday. But the second part of the sentence isn't true, that you're inefficient or incompetent. You've probably had loads on your plate. And they're just asking because they want to keep their workflow going. They're not asking out of any judgment of you, but we perceive that there's judgment coming from them. So they're just simple, or they're not simple, they're kind of big things, but they're all things we can change. And they're all things that if we do begin to explore those things, if we explore the way we think, explore perceptions of pressure and urgency, start to notice when we're perceiving the disapproval of others, it doesn't just change our stress response, it changes the way we show up and interact with others in our relationships. And all of that then obviously feeds back into our biochemistry. All of it feeds back into the way we're able to absorb the nutrients we eat from the food. Absorb the nutrients from the food that we eat. So much of our stress these days is psychological because it's not a physical threat to our life. We're very fortunate.
I love that. I love the idea we can retire from the rushing women syndrome. I'm really holding on to that. That's wonderful. And that everything you've just given us is wonderful tips. They're completely achievable, and they're achievable to do ourselves so that we can take and harness control of that as well. And then our bodies will, with time, follow suit. Which is a beautiful thing, and being able to trust that the body is self-healing and self-organizing. It's just putting the right stuff in, but that includes with how we think.
Exactly.
So how can we empower our daughters to achieve optimal health and well-being and maybe be a little less like us?
I think firstly, the way I look at it, Katie, is everything has benefits and drawbacks. It's just that when we're stuck in rushing woman syndrome, we sometimes get stuck on all the drawbacks of it and not the benefits. The benefits of being a rushing woman are we usually have really beautiful friendships and very genuine friendships because we're there for other people. We show other people we care, and that fosters obviously incredible connection, relationships, and the community. The world's going to fall apart if women stop caring about others. So I think we need to help our daughters to take the juicy bits, the supportive bits, but not to do things out of duty to the point of depletion. So it's tricky to not pass it on, because what I've witnessed in my work, so I will often, do a seminar about sex hormones, and always in the audience there'll be a school teacher or some mums who are really caring, and they'll say, "Can you go and present this work at my daughter's school?" Because they need to understand their sex hormones at a much younger age. And sometimes I do that, you forget how squirmy they all get when you start talking to them about their periods, though. But what I've realised is that at a young age, they haven't suffered yet. And we usually, very sadly, I wish it wasn't the case, but very sadly, it takes us to be suffering before we do anything about something. So, and I've seen that with sex hormones. It's not until it's, there's some sort of debilitating effect on their life, or they're not able to conceive, or there's horrific period pain, for example, that they might do something about it. So I think sometimes with rushing, I don't have any hard and fast answers other than to help our daughters to become aware of our forward words and to help them understand that we perceive reality, but that's not actuality. And I think we can help, young people understand that our brain is a very powerful meaning maker, and that what we do is, I'll often draw it for a young person. I'll draw a circle and I'll write the words "what happened," and they'll tell me the thing that happened. And then in the other circle, I'll write meaning. And I'll say, okay, so what meaning did you give that thing? And then we merge the what happened with the meaning, and all we take forward is the meaning. And so giving them tools to unpack that and separate them and see that it's the what happened that's the actuality, not the reality that they might be perceiving. So I think teaching our daughters to care and to continue to care, but also teaching them that it's really healthy when you're not aligned with something to say, oh no, I don't want to be part of that, or I've already got so much on my plate. I'd love to help this person asking me for help, but it's okay to say no, and they'll still be my friend, even though I'm going to say no. So it's sort of giving them permission to be themselves, isn't it? Rather than something that the world might want them to be.
Absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful. I agree. I think, so many beautiful qualities being a woman, and we want to harness those, but be a little bit more mindful about what we're telling ourselves. I love that. So our actuality is not necessarily the reality. It's a really, really beautiful tool. Dr. Libby, my goodness, it's been such a pleasure. I would love you to just share with the audience. There are so many ways in which you can help us, and you do some beautiful short courses which I've participated in. I've found them hugely useful, and I think they're highly valuable. I know you've just had your first in-person get-together in Burleigh Heads just over the weekend. I know that would have been very much welcomed by everyone who attended. I know also that not necessarily you directly, but you have a team who consult with people personally. I wonder whether you could share some of that information if people do want to get in contact with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Katie. Yes. So my website is drlibby.com, so drlibby.com. And there's lots of information on there for free. I also have a whole lot of online courses, as you touched on. So the latest course I've created is called Overcoming Rushing Woman Syndrome. And that's specifically designed to reach women who are really feeling the effects of the rush right now and help them to experience stress in a very different way. So there's that one. There's also Detox by Dr. Libby. And I have 13 books there as well. And then beautiful Jenny Brooks is the only person I've ever trained in my method, and she is the one who sees the patients. So you can read about her as well on drlibby.com.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so, so much. I feel lighter and certainly more joyful, because that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve here is happy, healthy, empowered selves, but that we can lead our lives with a bit more joy.
Very much so, Katie. Thank you so much for your lovely questions and your lovely energy. Thank you.